Hello, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the Serve Wisconsin Grant Application Reviewer Refresher Training for those of us that have been here before, but that are coming back to review some more grant applications. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for your time and your expertise and your lived experience and sharing those with us. My name is Elise Che. I'm a program officer at Serve Wisconsin and your RFP manager. So today we're going to talk about a few things. One, a little bit of background about AmeriCorps. Two, an overview of the review process just in general. And then three, a little bit of zooming into the actual review form that you will be filling out. So just a little bit about AmeriCorps. I know you all have done this before, so you know some of the basics. I like to remind people about the pledge. So every year we have new AmeriCorps members, sometimes every season, and each one of them takes the AmeriCorps pledge. The AmeriCorps pledge is to get things done, but also for focusing on strengthening our communities, taking action, resisting apathy, finding common ground among different kinds of Americans, different kinds of work. Not just serving for 1 year, but committing to getting things done as part of our daily life. So that's the AmeriCorps pledge. AmeriCorps has 6 focus areas that Congress identified as some of the areas where they'd like to see AmeriCorps programs working. There are these 6, but there are also opportunities for AmeriCorps programs that might not fit specifically or only in one of these categories to also have a focus of building the capacity of one or more nonprofit organizations to do amazing work and serve communities. This year, AmeriCorps has some new funding priorities. So as long as any one of these priorities is a large part of any of the application's program, the program they're describing, then they get priority consideration from Serve Wisconsin and from AmeriCorps. So one of the funding priorities is we want to fund organizations that are leading service in communities that are living with concentrated poverty, with rural communities, tribal communities, and any organizations that as a part of their AmeriCorps program are planning to serve historically underrepresented and underserved maybe individuals. So communities and or individuals, including but not limited to communities of color, immigrants and refugees, people living with disabilities, people who identify as part of the LGBTQIA+ community, people with arrest and or conviction records, and religious minorities. AmeriCorps also has a funding priority focused on programs that are evidence-based. So AmeriCorps programs, in order to get an AmeriCorps grant, you're required to propose a program that is either evidence-based, which means you're replicating a program that has been researched and a study has been done and it shows that it works, or at least evidence-informed, meaning that you may not be replicating a program exactly that has evidence, but you're basing your program, you're designing your program based on something that's evidence-based. There's also an AmeriCorps priority for programs that are serving veterans, military families, caregivers, and survivors. There's one just focused on serving through faith-based organizations. One of the priorities this year that's new is they want to fund programs that provide additional benefits to AmeriCorps members. So as you may know, AmeriCorps members do not earn a regular employee wage or salary. They do get paid, but the amount of the living allowance tends to be usually below what minimum wage would be. So people who want to serve in AmeriCorps are definitely making a sacrifice in order to serve. And so AmeriCorps and Serve Wisconsin is interested in focusing on programs that can find ways to provide additional benefits beyond just the living allowance. We're also looking for organizations that provide workforce pathways that help AmeriCorps members to find jobs or continue with education after they serve their AmeriCorps term. And I think this is the last one. We also have a focus on environmental stewardship, especially if that environmental stewardship is happening in underserved households and communities. Okay, sorry, there are two more, I forgot. Two more new AmeriCorps priorities. One, they call Second Chance Youth, youth that are looking for specific opportunities to re-engage either with the educational system or with the employment system. And there's also this new concept of bridge building, which is kind of relates back to the AmeriCorps pledge. We're talking about when faced with conflict, finding common ground. So we're looking specifically for programs that have that as part of their program design, reducing polarization and divisions inside of our communities. And finally, the last priority is we're focusing on programs that expand access to early learning, which could include preschool or pre-K, or even childcare for kids. All right, getting to the important thing we're here for, the review process. So I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of the entire grant application review process, so you can kind of see where your service to Serve Wisconsin fits in. So in the request for proposals document, all of this is explained, but here's the summary. First step is after we receive our applications is the external reviews. That's what you all are participating in. You are external to Serve Wisconsin, and so you are going to provide a review of each of the applications. Then there's an internal review, so Serve Wisconsin staff will go through and review every application. We also do a pre-award financial risk assessment. So we'll ask organizations that are applying for information about their financial systems, making sure they've got internal controls that are required for anybody who's going to receive a federal grant, and taking a look at their most recent audit. We also have a period where we will ask applicants for clarifications or revisions. So just because they submitted their application doesn't mean that they're not going to get a chance to do some revisions, especially based on feedback that may come from the external reviews, from your feedback, or from the internal reviews, from the feedback from the staff reviews, Serve Wisconsin staff reviews. We'll give feedback to applicants. They'll have some opportunities to do revisions. Then their applications, after being revised, will be reviewed, summarized and reviewed by the Serve Wisconsin Board's Program Evaluation and Development Committee. So that committee takes a look at summaries of every application, including the scores that you as external reviewers gave those applications and the scores that staff gave those applications upon review. And then the program, we call it the PE&D committee for short. The committee will vote on which of the proposals to fund and whether to fund them at the dollar amount that they requested. Those recommendations get forwarded to the full Serve Wisconsin board, where they again review the recommendations from the external reviewers, from staff reviewers, and any of the recommendations from the committee. And then finally, the applications that are approved for funding by the Serve Wisconsin board get forwarded to the AmeriCorps agency, and they have the opportunity to make some, to go through and double check for minimum requirements. For those of you who have participated in the past in a fall grant application review process, for those applications, Serve Wisconsin has a very rigorous application review process that they go through after the entire Serve Wisconsin review process. For this one, for the spring application process, mostly AmeriCorps will just be relying on the Serve Wisconsin grant application review process. So they'll just be looking for some of the basic minimum requirements for these applications. Once they're supported by Serve Wisconsin, we're likely to get them funded. Okay, so a few basics about who our reviewers are. You all are qualified in that you have lived experience in Wisconsin. AmeriCorps programs may serve just a part of Wisconsin or may have locations throughout the state, but we feel that it's important for our peer reviewers to have lived experience somewhere in Wisconsin. We're looking for folks that have technical experience, either in being staff at an AmeriCorps program, or technical experience in any one of the focus areas, or in nonprofit program management in general. And you have to have access to the internet, word processing software, and the ability to participate in video calls. Some of the responsibilities for reviewers. Please help us protect the integrity of our process by letting us know if you have any conflicts of interest. Please maintain confidentiality about both the applicants who applied and the content of their applications. Please don't use any of the information that you get from the review process to benefit yourself or another organization, and to please complete all the tasks. So there are a couple of forms you need to fill out, so please make sure that you check all of those boxes. What are the benefits for reviewers? You'll get some experience in analyzing and scoring grant applications, which can be added to your resume. That's definitely a skill that you're developing. You get an inside view of the grant making process of a major Wisconsin funder of nonprofit organizations in the state, and you'll be offered a stipend at the end after completing all the tasks. Your contributions are particularly important as an external reviewer. You provide an outside perspective. So I work at Serve Wisconsin. I deal with AmeriCorps programs day in and day out. So I have a lot of really detailed knowledge, but sometimes looking at the trees and really focusing on the trees makes it harder for me to step back and see the forest. And so that's one of the huge contributions that you provide during our process, is providing that outside perspective. Any criticism, preferably constructive, and suggestions that you can make based on reading through these applications are going to be hugely helpful. We can't tell you enough times how often when our applicants receive the feedback that they get from external reviewers, how often they'll tell us that really made it possible for them to take their application to the next level. So the feedback that you provide is hugely important, and it's very much appreciated. And also, we need your help to identify programs that have the best chance of success. Again, I'm doing this Serve Wisconsin stuff all the time, but you have different experiences in working with AmeriCorps or similar programs across Wisconsin. You can bring that lived experience, that technical knowledge to help us identify which programs are most likely to be successful. Overall goals of the review process: you will provide feedback to applicants. Sometimes one of the recommendations that we provide to applicants is to try to be both clear and concise, which sometimes are two opposite things. And so they're constantly, as they're putting together their application, as they're paying attention to the page limits, there's kind of going back and forth about, trying to be as clear as possible, but also as concise as possible. One of the huge ways that feedback can really help applications is to identify areas where it would help to be a little more concise, and also areas where it would help to have a little bit more language to be more clear. You're helping us to identify exemplary programs that definitely should be funding. You're also helping us to identify applications that really didn't respond to the request for proposals. The review form that you'll be filling out is literally just restating each of the criteria that were listed in the request for proposals. If we get applications that really just did not do a good enough job of responding to all of those criteria, or just kind of restated the criteria and said, oh, one of the requirements is that we do this, well, we do this. If they're not providing enough information for us to really score them well, we need that information, because then that tells us something about whether or not they're likely to be successful in operating an AmeriCorps program. And hopefully this will also increase your familiarity with how AmeriCorps works and how AmeriCorps programs and volunteerism happens across the state of Wisconsin. There are some materials that you will be sent. You'll get an email next week that will have the first two items, the first two bullets. One is going to be a link to a conflict of interest form that'll have a list of, this year we only have 2 applications that need to be reviewed by external reviewers. So we'll let you know who those organizations are. We'll give you a form that lists all the different kinds of things that we would consider conflicts of interest. If you do have any of those conflicts of interest, just send me an email. Sometimes, depending on what the conflict is, for some conflicts, just stating that you have a conflict is enough, and you can still participate as a reviewer. But certain conflicts, right, if it's somebody in your family and your family works there or something like that, we might have to make a little bit of a change of your application assignments. So please take a look at those options. At the conflict of interest form, fill that out, give that a signature. Then I'll also send you a link to a Google folder. And in that folder, you will find the 2 grant applications that you need to review. You'll find 2 blank reviewer forms that have all of those criteria where you'll put in your comments and your scores. There's also kind of an instruction guide or guide to reviewing applications. And any programs that are evidence-based that have that can show a research study or something like that that shows that their program that a program like theirs has already shown positive effects, they're welcome to send those. And so I'll give you a copy of those in case you want to skim through those as well. And then at the end of the process, I'll send you an invoice. You can fill out the information and I can submit that to the state process and get you a stipend. Here is the timeline. So applications are due on Tuesday, March 12th. And so the next morning, I will be sending you that email with the conflict of interest form and all of the application materials that you'll need. You'll have until Wednesday, March 27th, so 2 weeks, to review the applications and fill out your review forms. Please send those to me via email by Wednesday, March 27th. I will let you know that you're submitting those review forms, but those are kind of your draft review forms. When we have our meeting sometime during that week of March 25th, we'll have an opportunity for y'all to talk about what you saw and how you scored those. And if needed, you'll have an opportunity to discuss and come to consensus, and you'll be able to update your scores if you feel the need based on our discussion. So I do need to have just kind of at least a preliminary form filled out and submitted by the 27th, but that is a draft one. And you'll have an opportunity to update your scores later. Please submit your stipend invoice the week after the meeting. And by the week after the meeting, we will also be forwarding a copy of the review form that you fill out to our applicants. So they'll receive a copy of the review form that you fill out, which will not have your name on it or any identifying information. So they'll just know that there was reviewer number 1, reviewer number 2, reviewer number 3. They'll also get a copy of the staff review form. So one of the staff members at Serve Wisconsin will also go through their application, fill out a much longer review form that goes through a lot more of the technical information, and they'll get the feedback from those 2 review forms that week. Some reviewer don'ts to keep in mind. These are also in the guide, so don't feel like you have to memorize these. Try not to compare applications to one another. The idea is that we're comparing each individual application to the criteria. So all of the different things that you'll see in the review form. There's some organizations that have professional grant writers and other organizations that don't. And we don't want to benefit maybe the ones that have more experienced grant writers by comparing them to one that was written by somebody who may be more focused on program management. So it's really more about how well they responded to the criteria. Try not to focus on grammatical mistakes. As I said, the staff are going to go through and do a much more kind of nitpicky review. So don't worry about those. We'll take care of those. And we ask that you don't do any outside research or consider things like personal information that you may know from somebody you knew that worked there a long time ago or anything like that. Again, we're trying to, the goal is that the review is comparing the application to the criteria and including very little other information. Some things to do as opposed to those don'ts. Please do send me your review forms no later than March 27th. Come to the reviewer meeting prepared to discuss each of the applications. I'll let you know that a lot of folks like to put some of the comments and suggestions in the actual review form, things that they think will be particularly helpful to the applicant. But some people may also have a notes document or something where they wrote down notes that are just to remind them of things they were thinking when they went through the application, so that when we get to the conversation, right, you may forget some of the things that you were thinking, just things that you want to kind of remind yourself in preparation for the conversation. So that's up to you. But at the very least, please do take notes about strengths and weaknesses right in the review form. Be sure to notify us if you notice that you have any conflicts based on the conflict of interest form. And let us know if once the meeting is scheduled, something happens and you're not able to make it. Okay, almost done. How does the review process work for these external reviews? First, you'll sign the conflict of interest form, letting us know if you do have any conflicts. We ask that you go through the review form, the blank review form, before you start scoring, so that you're kind of thinking about each of the criteria as you're reading through. We strongly recommend, but don't require, that you read through the entire application first before doing any scoring, just to kind of get a gist of what the whole plan is. And then we recommend reading it through a second time, adding all of your thoughts and comments, suggestions, and scoring to see whether or not you think they met the criteria. How will your feedback be used? So as I mentioned, after the external review, we will combine your reviews and your scores with the reviews that the staff have created, as well as a review if it's an organization that has had an AmeriCorps program in the past. We'll also look at their past compliance, whether or not they submitted reports on time, how well they ran their AmeriCorps program, give them a score there too. All of that information is going to be combined and forwarded to both the Serve Wisconsin committee and then the full Serve Wisconsin board. Again, the more comments and more detail, whether that's just a comment or a suggestion, the better. Again, our applicants really, really appreciate more feedback if you've got it. And just to remind you, although I know who the reviewers are and Serve Wisconsin staff may know, we do not share any of the information about who our reviewers are with any of the applicants or even with our board directors. We'll have the peer reviewer meeting. We'll do that by Zoom since we often have reviewers from across the state. We will probably focus on areas where the reviewers had differences in scores. So if everybody scored the same application, gave them 3 points for this section or something like that, we probably won't spend a lot of time talking about that section. We'll focus more on the sections where folks' scores varied a little bit different. I'll be there to answer any questions, but it'll really be between you and the other reviewers to have the conversation and decide how well you think each applicant addressed each of the criteria. And then after that, I guess I said, that'll go to the board and then we'll send those applications up to AmeriCorps. Quick overview of the review form, which you'll have soon. So each one is broken down into the different sections of the application. On the left side, you'll see there's the specific criteria that the RFP said, you got to do this. You got to provide a detailed summary of the community problem that your AmeriCorps program is going to address. In that middle column, you say yes or no. Obviously, it's not always that black and white, but what are they closest to? Do they get really close to having a detailed summary? And was it detailed or not? And then you have the third column. The third column on the right is the opportunity for you to add strengths or areas for improvement. At the end of each section, you'll also have kind of like a general comment section in case you want to have things and say, overall this was good, but the one thing that was missing, you might find something, for example, that doesn't really apply to the criteria. You're welcome to add those comments as well. And then at the very end of each section, I think there are maybe 8 sections, you will see what the total number of points available for that section is, and then you will give a score. So for the community problem and logic model section, those two are kind of smushed together. Applicants can get up to 24 points for that section. These are all the sections, and you'll see more about that in the guide and in the review form. That's how it's broken down, but you can also kind of see there are 100 points for the entire application. You can take a look and see how those points are spread out among the different sections. I'm going to skip through some of these other sections because y'all have already seen some of the forms before. I'm going to skip through the evidence review. Just point out that there is a guide, which is kind of your instruction document that you'll also receive. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining us. You can email me at any time with your questions, elise.che@wisconsin.gov. You'll also get a copy of these slides. And that'll also have a link to the request for proposals, which lists all of the criteria.